I've noticed that anytime a new flagship smartphone comes out, one of the primary questions that gets asked is this worth upgrading to from last year's model? Generally speaking, the answer to that question is almost certainly no. I think even from the perspective of the OEMs, they're not really expecting very many people to go from S23 Ultra to S24 Ultra to S25 Ultra. There are some super fans out there who will do this. But for most people, it's going to look something like S20 Ultra to S23 Ultra or S24 Ultra. Most people are going to keep that phone for a few years. And I think that as the price of phones goes up more and more, so you go from budget phones where maybe you should be upgrading every year or two, to mid-range, to high-end where maybe it's every 3 years, it's reasonable to think that people who are buying folding phones, which are $17, $18, $1,900, maybe they're not going to be looking to buy every year. Maybe it's every other, maybe it's every 3 or 4. Now, these are probably tech enthusiasts, and maybe that kind of shrinks the gap a little bit. Maybe it's every 2 years, maybe it's every 3 years, but bare minimum, I don't think you got a whole lot of people upgrading to a new $1,800 phone every year. If we zoom in a bit more though on foldables, which kind of the focus of this channel, I think that we have some really interesting data beginning to come into focus. This is counterpointresearch.com, and we're looking at global foldable smartphone shipments by OEM share, Q3 2024 versus Q3 of 2023. So this is 2023 on the left, 2024 on the right. And there's a lot of stuff we could sort of dig into, right? So we have Samsung sitting at 56% market share in terms of foldable phones shipped globally. That is a big drop from last year. And bear in mind, this is the quarter where the Z Fold and Z Flip devices are going to be shipping. So that's a big decrease from last year to this year. We've talked about this. The Z Fold 6 did not sell as well as the Z Fold 5, which did not sell as well as the Z Fold 4. So those shipments are dropping. Nonetheless, for that quarter, Samsung is in first place, but they may have been the one that shipped the big phone of that quarter, right? So like Huawei, I think that their stuff, the Mate XT Ultimate, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but it might have been in Q4. Hard to say, not super important. The other thing that I want to point out though, is that total, we're down 1%. Now, there's margin of error there. Basically, what I would say is year over year, looking at Q3, global smartphone foldable phone shipments did not seem to grow in any significant way. In fact, they may have shrunk slightly. Now, I don't think that this is obvious cause for doom and gloom. Like, I don't think that this indicates that foldable phones are already going the way of 3D TVs. I don't think that that's quite it at all. What I think that we are maybe seeing happening, though, is market saturation being kind of reached, right? The number of people who are going to spend, let's say, $1,500 and up on a smartphone, whether it folds or otherwise, is probably fairly limited. And when you compare it to the number of people that will buy a slab phone, it is very, very small. So we may have already gotten close to the point where the people that are going to be buying foldable phones have probably already bought a foldable phone. I've said repeatedly that I think what some of these OEMs need to be doing is not pursuing the super premium folds, but trying to have cheaper, lower-end foldable phones. And when you look at this stuff, look at Motorola, up 164% year over year. Look at Honor, look at Xiaomi. What are all of them doing? They're making cheaper foldable phones. Now, granted, Xiaomi and Honor are still kind of pushing the premium hardware, but still at a lower price. This was back in Q1, so 2023, Q1, 2024, Q1 Motorola, up 1,400% on their shipments. They are thriving. And what are they doing? They're making cheaper folding phones. They are finding a way around this market saturation. Okay, the people who are willing to pay $1,800 are pretty few and far between, and most of them already own a folding phone, and they're probably going to be happy with it for the next 2 or 3 years. So we're not going to go for them. We're going to go for the people who want a cheaper phone, people that can say, yeah, for $800, whatever it might be, I can go with that. Another angle on this is that when you're talking about a bunch of large OEMs trying to compete over a pretty small number of customers, things are going to get tight pretty quickly for the smaller fish in that pretty small pond. Those big fish are just going to squeeze them all the way out. If I look at this snippet here from a TrendForce article, they mentioned that brands like Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo struggle to grow their foldable phone sales, each falling below 1 million units. Now, this is for 2024, and it's important to remember Oppo/OnePlus did not release a new foldable phone in 2024. But you're seeing brands who have grown in other ways, like Xiaomi, just not selling all that many foldable phones. And that's despite the fact that they make some of the best foldable phones on the market. Oppo, OnePlus, fantastic foldable devices, and yet they can't seem to crack 1 million units sold. As great as I think the OnePlus Open is, when you start to think about the fact that they did not release the Open 2 a year after the original, it does look like we're going to get a OnePlus Open 2 at the start of 2025, you have to kind of start wondering what their strategy is going to be going forward. Does OnePlus/Oppo see the Open or the Find N series of devices as a big moneymaker? Or do they almost see it as more of a hero device? Maybe developing this thing on an every other year cycle just makes sense going forward. I would not be shocked at all if we start to see other smaller brands being squeezed by the Samsungs and Huawei's of the world begin to shift to an every other year cycle, as they assume people probably aren't going to go from Open to Open 2 in only a year anyways. It might make perfect sense to step back and take your time developing these devices, make them be the most feature-rich devices that you have, and release them, like I said, as that hero device to sort of showcase how great you actually are without really expecting or needing to sell millions of them for it to make sense. For a phone like that, it's not so much about selling millions of units and putting tons of phones into people's pockets. It can be more about sort of conveying a certain image about the brand that has almost a trickle-down effect into the other devices. It might also warrant having that price be a little bit higher to increase that profit margin. As these OEMs go through generation after generation, they're either going to sink or swim. They're going to figure out what these devices can be for their portfolio, and they're going to have to adjust to that. And I honestly believe that for a lot of these OEMs, what I'm describing is just going to end up making more sense. Don't do a new phone every year. Your normal phones, your slabs are annual, but your foldable, your flagship hero device that can be the crown jewel of your lineup might only need to be every other year. Now, I am quite confident that OnePlus Open 2 is coming in Q1 of 2025, but I would not be shocked at all if we don't see the OnePlus Open 3 for a couple of years after that. So guys, those are just some thoughts that have been kind of bumping around my head for a little while. I put a lot of this together in a post on Threads back 10 days ago, and then we had this new little bit of news coming out, and I just thought, okay, maybe it's time to actually kind of put this to a video. But I do want to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. Which OEMs do you think it would make sense to switch to an every other year pattern or cadence for foldable phones? Maybe all of them should do that. I don't know, but I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.